It is such a pleasure to be with you right here on the India Development Debate on ET Now. I'm Supriya, Shrinate, and with me is Sandeep, Gurumurthi. Trust Modi when it comes to giving back to his critics in style, it seems. Speaking in Lucknow on Sunday, Prime Minister Modi said he is not afraid of standing next to industrialists, unlike some of the opposition party leaders. Modi also attacked his political rivals for dubbing industrialists as chor and luterey. In a bind, the Congress is fighting back, asking the Prime Minister to release the list of his friends to see if it includes those who are involved in bank scams as well. Industry has, however, raised a toast to Modi, stating that the Prime Minister's reassurance will boost confidence and work as a catalyst for growth.
Praise on the Prime Minister apart, it is a tough balancing act for India Inc. when it comes to relations with political outfits. Family-run businesses often find themselves in a spot over their political affiliations. More often than not, they're forced to take a pro-establishment line to ensure that their businesses don't suffer. Corporate watchers say there is nothing wrong in industry-friendly approach by the government, and the real issue is of crony capitalism. The Prime Minister's comments on the politician-industry association and what it means for industry and political parties, that's the larger topic that we're debating tonight on the India Development Debate. Before we introduce a panel, let's listen in to that face-off, the comments from Rahul Gandhi that prompted the Prime Minister to come back with a sharp rebuttal just yesterday in Lucknow.
प्रधानमंत्री आपने 2.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए हिंदुस्तान के सबसे अमीर 20-25 उद्योगपतियों का माफ किया, कर्जा माफ किया। प्रधानमंत्री जी, हिंदुस्तान का किसान कहता है माफ, आपने उनका किया। हाथ जोड़ के आपसे कहता है हमारा भी थोड़ा सा माफ कर दीजिए। और फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर कहते हैं नहीं 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 नहीं, किसान का कर्जा माफ नहीं होगा, सबसे बड़े उद्योगपतियों का होगा, किसान का नहीं होगा, क्योंकि तुम लोगों में शक्ति नहीं है, तुम लोगों में दम नहीं है, तुम लोग सूट नहीं पहनते, बूट नहीं पहनते। चलाता है, पूरी दुनिया में पेट्रोल के दाम नीचे गिर रहे हैं, हिंदुस्तान में ऊपर, क्योंकि नरेंद्र मोदी अपने मित्रों के जेब में पैसा डालना चाहते हैं।
हम वो लोग नहीं है जी जो उद्योगकारों के बगल में खड़े रहने से डरते हैं, वरना कुछ लोगों को आपने देखा होगा, उनकी एक फोटो आप नहीं निकाल सकते किसी उद्योगपति के साथ, लेकिन एक देश का उद्योगपति ऐसा नहीं हो जिन्होंने उनके घरों में जाकर के साष्टांग दंडवत न किए हो। नियत साफ हो, इरादे नेक हो, तो किसी के भी साथ खड़े होने से दाग नहीं लगते। महात्मा गांधी का जीवन इतना पवित्र था, उनको बिरला जी के घर परिवार में जाकर के रहने में कभी संकोच नहीं हुआ, बिरला जी के साथ खड़े रहने में उनको कभी संकोच नहीं हुआ। नियत साफ थी, जिन लोगों को पब्लिक में तो मिलना नहीं है, पर्दे के पीछे सब कुछ करना है, वो डरते रहते हैं। अगर हिंदुस्तान को बनाने में एक किसान का मेहनत काम करती है, एक कारीगर की मेहनत काम करती है, एक बैंकर फाइनेंसर की मेहनत काम करती है, एक सरकार के मुलाजिम की मेहनत काम करती है, एक मजदूर की मेहनत काम करती है, वैसे देश के उद्योगकारों की भी देश को बनाने में भूमिका होती है।
All right, down the India Development Debate tonight, Shobna Kamineni, former President CII and Executive Vice Chairperson of Apollo Hospitals representing India Inc. Two experts on the show, Swaminathan Iyer, Consulting Editor ET Now, and R. Jagannathan, Editorial Director at Swaraj Magazine. And from the BJP, we've got Hitesh Jain. Sanjay Jha joins us from the Congress Party. Only fair that we open it with the view from corporate India. Shobna Kamineni, has the industry in some sense got caught in this political crossfire? Is this the much needed confidence that Indian industry needed from the government, which it has finally got from the Prime Minister?
You know, I think it was an honest statement, and coming from a Prime Minister, you know, of his stature, because if you see, most of what has happened in the 4 years has not really been targeted towards helping a industry, but a particular company, but it was more largely towards helping, the industry at large. And I think that's important, whether you look at the reforms for electricity reforms, or you look at the rail reform, I mean the defense, many of these that you're looking at really was the scrapping of the DIPP, this investment promotion board. So all these things, I think, was really clearly that you wanted to do business. So being caught in the crossfire for, I don't think that's the case, because it was not like the previous government also. I think they were quite industry friendly. They were the ones that opened up FDI to a large extent. If you look at the greatest reforms were done during P.V. Narasimha Rao's time. So this is ongoing, that it's important that industry is given recognition for its role in nation building. That to me is the point.
Okay, let me just take it across to Swaminathan Iyer, who's joining us right here. And Swami, what is perhaps even more significant than the very emphatic statement being made by the Prime Minister is the place where he chose to endorse industry. And he had some 80-odd CEOs sitting there from the likes of Gautam Adani to Kumar Mangalam Birla and everybody there in the first row. And that's where he made the statement. Has Mr. Modi thrown the gauntlet at his opponents by doing that?
Without doubt, we are in election mode. Within election mode, Mr. Modi is going to once again go all out to say this Congress party of Rahul Gandhi was this horrible, corrupt mess which the people of India voted out in 2014. Do you want that horrible bunch of guys to come back again? So you have Rahul Gandhi attempting to wiggle out of this by throwing the same mud back at Modi, asserting that, what you're doing is for the suited booted, or you are only interested in the crooked cronies, you are not interested in the people of India. And we now have Mr. Modi fighting back, because Modi is not going to go slow on this. And I think he has a relevant point in saying there was a time when Mahatma Gandhi, the Congress leader, went around Delhi in Mr. J.D. Birla's car, stayed in Birla House, and was in fact assassinated in Birla House. But between 1947 and now, look at the change in the Congress party. I mean, the Gandhi cap and the khadi, which was once upon a time associated with, shall we say, the independence movement and honesty and probity, has increasingly got associated, I am afraid, with corruption and sleaziness. I mean, Rahul may believe that suit boot is a more corrupt image than Gandhi cap. I'm not sure that is true as the public is concerned, and certainly the way they voted in 2014, I think speaks for itself.
Okay, that's a fair point indeed. I mean, suit boost versus the Gandhi cap, but I think the big difference between the Mahatma and the present political class, both on the ruling and the opposition side, is that the Mahatma was fighting for the independence of this country and was being funded by industrialists. But Sanjay Jha, there's an important point here. Has the Congress party taken the anti-business tirade a tad too far? I mean, Rahul Gandhi in Parliament says that the PM listens only to 15 to 20 suit boot businessmen. Are you being unfair? Are you painting the entire Indian business community with one stroke, presenting them in bad light, almost demonizing what is big business?
Supriya, I'm glad you're asking me this question on a very popular business channel. And I do hope a lot of the CEOs and Indian industry watching this program will hear the official Congress standpoint on this issue. But before I address that, it is very pertinent to point out that Narendra Modi's response in the conference at Lucknow seems to manifest that Mr. Rahul Gandhi talking about the Chaukidar becoming a Bhagidar, specifically amongst others in the Rafale scam, has clearly rattled him. And I think that is something which Swaminathan Iyer, with due respects to him, cannot wash it away with just a criticism of the suit boot. I'm sorry, sir, but end of day, we are talking about national resources. And no one, I don't care who you are, has the right to indulge in anything which is taking away the benefits from the common man. But let me address the point of the industry first. And I repeat it, and I'm saying this with full responsibility as an official national spokesperson of my party. The Congress party was and is and will be pro-business, pro-industry, pro-SMEs, pro-startups, pro-foreign direct investments, pro-reforms, and by the way, pro-liberalization. If you want, I can repeat that again, but I am making an emphatic statement here. What we are against is what we call as the select big business becoming the favorites or the blue-eyed boys of the government. We are against crony capitalism. Under Narendra Modi, I don't want to take names, but you know who we are talking about, there are certain favored big businesses whose clout has gone, I think, into stratospheric levels. I think at some point, the way they have acquired public assets, the manner in which deals have been given to them, is going to come under serious public scrutiny.
Okay, I take that point,
And
Sanjay.
may I remind Mr. Iyer, I have a lot of respect for him. I read his columns every Sunday. Now, I want to make one point. No, I
Okay,
want to
very
make this
quickly,
one
very
point.
quickly.
Mr. Iyer, since he writes a lot on corporate governance and he's very concerned about the Indian economy, with due respects, Mr. Iyer, please do comment somewhere during this program as to how do you view a government of the day which says that if you want to do political funding, anonymous, opaque,
Okay, Sanjay, we will talk. We are talking on that.
kosher.
Sanjay, we
I'd
are
like
going to talk on electoral
take your
funding.
opinion
We are going to talk on
how
electoral
that
funding.
could be the kingpin or the linchpin of corruption in this
Okay,
country.
I take that point. We are going to be talking on electoral funding. Swami is, you know, is scathing in his criticism of any government, any policy. So, you know, I don't need to defend Swami on this show here. But Jaggi, are you convinced by this, you know, by this emphatic assertion of Sanjay? Before I go to Hitesh, and by this emphatic assertion of Sanjay that the Congress party is pro-industry, pro-market, pro-reform, and in some sense, is the stand of the party or a politician depending on where he or she sit, you know, their position towards industry, because today they are in opposition. So when the same Rahul Gandhi spoke at FICCI, he is, you know, before the elections in 2014, he sang a very different tune. Today, you know, for him to paint the entire corporate India in one brush as if they are all crooks, there is this, you know, there is this perception of you know, as if corporate India is a bunch of thugs and liars that has been, you know, floated around by Rahul Gandhi and the Congress party. You know, do you buy this point made by Sanjay?
See, the problem is there is a wide divergence between what the political position that Rahul Gandhi has taken as far as industry is concerned and what Sanjay Jha is articulating right now. The kind of pro-liberalization, pro-market, pro-business, pro-X, pro-this, pro-that is not manifest in what Rahul Gandhi says. All that Rahul Gandhi says is that this government is favoring big business, it's not favoring farmers. That's a single line he keeps saying again and again, pitting farmers against industry, whereas both need to work together. And I can tell you one thing, that I think the Prime Minister did a good thing by saying that, look, you need to have somebody on industry's corner, even if it's part of politics. I think it is important to say that. I think this country has far too long demonized businesses of every kind, and any kind of profit is a bad word. It started with Nehru, who started saying, for me, profit is a bad word. I mean, that's the kind of attitude we have had. I'm glad that the PM said, if you are a good business, not into unethical things, we will support you, I will stand by you, I will photograph you. Yeah, of course, you can say that the Congress party can also say that, but then that was not the case in UPA too. It was full of crony capitalism. Now the Congress is claiming that you are also crony capital. They are trying to pull him down a peg. But basically, I think Mr. Modi made the right statements, right sentiments. It's high time political leaders kept business out of their politics, and they should actually go after genuine crooks and not paint the whole industry as bad. And I think there is a reset that's happening in business, and that's good. And this is the right time for Modi to come out and say, I will back good business and I will be seen with you guys.
Point you're making, Jaggi, and can't agree more with you on that. And Hitesh Jain, coming to you then, what has changed? I don't think any sort of, you know, neutral expert is going to be critical of what the Prime Minister said in Uttar Pradesh yesterday, and everyone's going to welcome it. But one wonders why now? What has changed? Is it, like Swami pointed out, is it because we are getting into election season and the government and, you know, now needs industry to support? What has changed? Because politicians have never been, you know, comfortable being seen in the company of big industrialists. And, you know, as Chief Minister, Narendra Modi Modi was fine, being like Jaggi wrote in his article today as well, he was fine sort of, reaching out to being seen as pro-business. But once, Arvind Kejriwal and Rahul Gandhi attacked him called him Soot Boot Ki Sarkar, the government just completely withdrew. So I'm trying to understand what has changed.
Well, after being reduced to 44, if you would have seen a pattern in the last 4 years, Congress finds it amusing to mock BJP and especially the Prime Minister Modi and try to build a false narrative that this is the government against the poor. This is a very old tactics that have been followed by Congress party for the last 40 years. Now you are aware that in 1971 they gave the Nara of Garibi Hatao just to portray an image, oh we are very pro-poor and we are anti-rich and all. And if you would have seen that for last 40 years they have milked this slogan and the fourth generation of Congress was in the power and neither they have been able to remove the Garibi Hatao, neither they have been eliminate the poverty. Now what has happened when when a government is enjoying a popular mandate, there is a tendency to make a very bizarre statement, oh, Soot Boot Ki Sarkar, mocking, trolling, abusing, name calling. What has been happening in last 4 years is
government have to take it seriously.
Being a corporate lawyer, apart from being a political party member, but I will just give you one more thing that allow me to complete that. When you look at the lot of corporate people when they come, I mean they say that why people look at us by way of like as if we are thieves, scoundrel. Why shouldn't the I mean at one end all the political parties they come to us, they do, I mean they speak to us, they talk to us. There are people who meet publicly, there are people who meet privately. So I think the Prime Minister has been bold enough. He has called spade a spade. He had exposed the hypocrisy. You look at all this thing. Look at the various examples. I mean, the hypocrisy is at one end, like 5 years before you were calling Mayawati all the names and suddenly because it suits convenience, suddenly she's become this thing. So, in last 5 years, if you will see, Congress is reduced to troll. They just want to destroy the fabric. They do not want to allow. I mean, when the ease of doing business came, no. We will refer to some perception-based survey in the Economist and everything. So the tendency is to call the name.
Hitesh, we've had a member of. No, Hitesh, let me just come in for a minute. You were also doing that with your allies. So I don't want to discuss ally politics here. This is about corporate India, and Shobhana Kamineni, who represents that, has already said that things were happening in the previous government and this government. So let's not digress from the topic on hand. I'm going to take it across to Swami. And Swami, do you believe this accusation of this government being crony capitalist has enough basis? I mean, Pratap Bhanu Mehta today says that the Modi government has added an insidious dimension to the nexus between state and capital. Do you agree with him?
As long as there is a significant element of discretion in taking decisions, the beneficiaries of those decisions typically are cronies. And let me say, the biggest exhibition of this was in the license permit Raj of 3-4 decades under the Congress. Every single industrial license was in effect a favor. Every import license was in effect a favor. Every foreign exchange allocation was a favor. I mean, there was not one single license or permit which was not some kind of favor, because competition was frowned upon and the market was frowned upon. So I'm afraid cronyism was built into the system, into every kind of decision making in that particular highly controlled thing. Since 1991, the liberalization started, of course, by the Congress party, but continued by the BJP, and the Congress now appears to be somewhat ashamed of what was done in 1991, perhaps because it was done by Narasimha Rao and not a member of the Gandhi family. But the fact is that now that we have real competition, a larger and larger portion of the economy is being determined by competition and merit. The amount that is being decided by discretion still remains. Let nobody pretend that licenses and permits have disappeared or that corruption has disappeared. Let nobody pretend that cronyism from 100% has come to 0%. But the very process of liberalization surely has brought it down. It's a very good thing that, for instance, that most natural resources are now being auctioned. We even had on the mines the Minerals Act. I mean, the Congress at one point of time was thinking of introducing that act. It actually got introduced by the BJP. So minerals are getting auctioned, spectrum is getting auctioned. So, you know, in more, the areas of discretion are getting reduced, but they are still very much there. So let us not pretend that cronyism has gone, but let us not equally pretend that cronyism is at some kind of all-time high. It is a tiny fraction of what it was in the license permit Raj.
Putting it in some sort of historical context, which is important really for this conversation, since the Prime Minister evoked from time of Mahatma Gandhi to now. But let's get down to brass tacks. Shobha Kamanini, what does all of this sort of, you know, political mongering, this sort of, you know, attack on industry, what does this do to sentiment of corporate India? What does this do to investments? Many believe that the government was sort of, you know, to start off very sympathetic to business, pro-market, but then of course this attack of Soot Boot Ki Sarkar, you know, sort of had a telling effect, and then, you know, it had to overcorrect to be seen as tough and to be seen as pro-poor and maybe even anti-industry. Would you agree with that assessment?
See, first of all, I think that mongering is such a extreme word. So I don't believe, I want to stay out of this mongering dialogue. This is, politics is different, industry is different. Please look at it. I think for every one good thing he did for industry at large, and again not a industry, you have to look at the slew of things that were also done for farmers, for, you know, just opening up the economy, and I think that creating jobs. At the end of it, please, you know, let's judge everyone, industry, government, everyone. Have we done enough for jobs? Have we done enough to strengthen the economy? And that place that we are today, that we've moved up in the governance order, that ease of doing business order, one of the strongest top 5 in, you know, GDP countries in the world. You don't get this, you know, just on the back of helping one company, or I think it's everyone that is required in economic activity. So whichever the government, and I think that both, I mean that any government that comes to India should and will have an agenda. It's just that sometimes it's nice when industry is acknowledged.
Okay, so it's always good to have industry acknowledged, at least when you're going to be the job generators and the investment guzzlers. But Jagya, I'll come to you. You know, Rahul Gandhi's Soot Boot Ki Sarkar allegations has had a telling effect. The government abandoned its move to push through changes to the land acquisition law and the central labour laws. No matter what the BJP representative and what ministers tell us, this did have a telling effect, which is why they backtracked from this. If the Prime Minister is really serious about standing with the industry and promoting them, will he be willing to review his government's position on both of these very contentious, sensitive issues?
My guess is that if he does get a second term, these will become priorities, because I think the reason why they were not taken up was a very simple thing. There was no Rajya Sabha consensus on it, and the government does not have strength in the Rajya Sabha. So, and the Rajya Sabha actually uses its power to spike and filibuster. It does, if it straight away rejected a bill instead of just sitting on it for 3 years, it could have come to a joint session of parliament and got resolved. But what the Rajya Sabha does is, it just sits on them. I mean, nothing ever moves after that, and before you know, you got legislation that dies a quiet death. So I think you need some kind of either a government opposition consensus on bills, which is how the GST got through, or you must have a rule-based system whereby if the Rajya Sabha rejects a bill or modifies a bill, it can go to a joint session and get resolved one way or the other. If you don't do one of these two things, you are going to get endless deadlock, and that's where I think both government and opposition need to rethink and say, look, some things are above dispute, we have to solve this for the country. It is not about Congress or BJP in this case, and I hope both parties and the government reaches out to the opposition to get key bills passed, and I hope the opposition also, even though it's now poll mode and it's a bit difficult time for doing that, but they must accept the reality. If you can give the PM a hug, why can't you give a handshake over legislation? I mean, I don't understand that. There's no point in the hug if you're not going to do the same hug in the Rajya Sabha when legislation comes.
I'm sure Sanjay will have a point to make on that. Sanjay, I'm coming to you, but just want to get a quick word from Shobhana, because I want to present to our viewers the full view. You know, there are things that have been said, and it's only fair that we discuss it in totality. And Ms. Kamineni, can sections of Indian industry absolve themselves of the responsibility of bringing shame upon industry at large? I mean, the fact of the matter is, Nirav Modi was part of the Indian delegation of CEOs that accompanied that was there at Davos when the Prime Minister visited a very historic visit. So can sections of Indian industry really absolve themselves of bringing shame to corporate India at large?
You're broad basing, shame and such extreme words. If you really look at it, what is this NPA? Much of the NPA has resulted in companies that actually overextended themselves for works for which they didn't get paid for. A lot of the construction companies were under stress for that. And I think that, if you look at it, I'm not absolving industry of blame. Yes, there were some bad apples, but you can't just say that everybody is tainted by the same brush. So, and I really think that for the 1% that did bad, you don't put the 99% in that same bucket. That's a bit extreme.
Okay, Sanjay, I'm going to come to you, and I need you to react to what Shobhana Kamineni said, that even in this, there were a few rotten apples in that card, but let's not paint everybody with a bad brush. The larger question also that gets thrown back at the Congress party is that, can you absolve yourself? Can you wash your hands of this NPA mess? Because many, reports after reports seem to suggest that a direct outcome of the industry, banking, political nexus was the kind of NPA build-up that we saw. I blame the Modi government for not acting on this in the last 4.5 years and acting on it decisively and fast. But the reality is it all came into being while you were in power.
Supriya, you need to fix your sound. I mean, I'm not able to hear anything continuously. It's terrible. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No sound.
Am I audible now?
You better fix your sound.
Can you hear me now at all?
So I'm not able to answer.
Can we fix our audio with Sanjay Jha? Okay. I don't think Sanjay Jha can get my question there. Let me take this across to Swami. And Swami, while we are fixing our audio with Sanjay Jha, I want you to respond to this question. The whole banker industry political nexus is actually the root cause of this NPA. Has that been decisively broken?
Not decisively broken, but shall we say for the first time, we are beginning to have an exit policy for inefficient or crooked businessmen, which was never the case earlier. Now, we are aware of the fact that there used to be this evergreening of loans. We are also aware that there were sick industries but no sick industrialists. And constantly one way or the other, the fellow would get bailed out. And the government policy would be manipulated to make things okay. I remember the very first press conference I attended as a journalist back in '66. Some rayon tire cord guys. They were complaining on the one hand of all kinds of government controls. Then they also complained, and we are not getting new licenses. I said, why do you want new licenses if it's so bad? And then the man laughs and says, the important thing is, first you get the contract and then you manipulate the conditions to make it profitable. We have to get away from that kind of system. So finally, this insolvency and banking code, we finally are beginning to see the exit of some big businessmen from some very, very big projects. I mean, for SR Oil to be sold to Rosneft is a big deal. For JP Cement plants to be sold to Birla is a very big deal. What you are seeing in the Bhushan, what you are seeing in Monet, Amtech, some of these very, very big guys, finally the crooked or unscrupulous or inefficient crooks in business are finally getting their comeuppance. For this we must be thankful. Let me say that the process of asking these questions did begin under Congress rule when Raghuram Rajan was there. Right. But the measures he tried to bid to clean up the system proved to be insufficient. And it's this IBC which is proving to be stronger Whether it will be goes far enough, I don't know. But I would say that we have made finally a decisive break. And while I would say, without doubt, the BJP has to get credit for it, the movement did start when Raghuram Rajan was there in the Congress time too.
So Swami trying to apportion credit as well there. But, as we fix the audio link with Sanjay, Hitesh, in the same speech, the Prime Minister also said that those who cheat the system will either be in jail or flee the country. Is there a tacit acceptance of the government's failure and inability to bring back fugitives? Because, there's no glory in letting a crew get away from the country.
Well, there is never a tacit acceptance or an affirmation to do a particular act. I think what you have to read, that the Prime Minister clearly said that people are now afraid of breaking the law. They know that they cannot just break the law and they can just have they are just protected and nobody is going to touch them. The meaning of the speech is very clear, that if you are going to violate the law is going to take the course, and whoever the person will be, the consequences will follow. Now, one more point I want to give a different dimension. We could have got into this whole debate. We knew in whose plane Sonia Gandhi was traveling, and Nirav Modi's cocktail party, Rahul Gandhi was there. But did we stop at that, or did we enter into a name calling? Because last 4 years, as Swami rightly mentioned, one of the legacy of this government is going to be the bankruptcy code. But the problem is, the Congress, suppose in their regime also some discussion started, they are not ready to own up. They do not consider this as an important reform. For them, everything that is implemented and executed by this government, they don't want to be constructive. They only want to mock. You saw the case in point when the GST was being debated. What happened during the GST? Only abusing or mocking or calling names, this can be a very attractive speech like a suit boot. But ultimately, is there any constructiveness in the speech? Is there any substance in the speech? So one has to look at the substance, and the substance behind the Prime Minister's speech is very simple, that if you are going to break the law, then whoever you are, the law is going to take the course. At the same time, Supriya, allow me to complete. At the same time, people who are building the business are also honest people, and we cannot mock them.
No, we should not mock honest businessmen, and obviously big business needs to be respected for the kind of job opportunities they create, the kind of investments they put in. But while you may disagree with me that this wasn't a tacit acceptance, if the law really has to catch up, then Vijay Mallya and Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi had no business to flee our country. Why did we allow them to get away is the big question. But I'll get Sanjay Jha to answer some of the points that you raised. And one of the very important points, Sanjay, is that you're not being constructive. This is constant criticism. You're not being constructive. The only aim is to mock. Is that, that is what the ruling party has to say about the principal opposition.
Supriya, I've missed the last 15 minutes of the conversation because I couldn't hear anything, but let me respond to some of the issues that I heard while the audio line was fine. Number one, I need to debunk this absolutely atrocious and absurd hypothesis that Swaminathan Iyer floated, that the Congress party is apologetic about the 1991 liberalization reforms. It's utter rubbish. It's ridiculous, and I'm telling you, that's not the case. Now, the second point. End of day, the Congress party introduced the pragmatic reforms of liberalization, which have sustained thereafter, after going through the usual up and downs based on economic circumstances. But it is the Congress party, and I don't need to rationalize this every time, but let me repeat it again. At no point has Mr. Gandhi said or rubbished industry. I don't know why are people saying that. He's talking about a few select people. And let me tell you, that's not unusual either. It's happening in America, it's happening in Britain, it happens in all democracies. It probably may have happened in India earlier as well. But the truth is that right now, crony capitalism is at its very peak. Whether some people agree with it or not, that's their perspective. I respect that. The larger point, FDI in multi-brand retail, FDI in general. With Mr. Chidambaram being the finance minister, I'm aware of how we handled the entire economic situation in India when the global turmoil of 2007-8 was, damaging international economies. And we did that through a fine combination of both liberalization as well as, domestic kind of growth. The point that we need to understand here, I think that is fundamental to the discussion, is all those people who are the so-called, what I call as a right liberal economists, who believe that India will only move on growth and you can just forget about, social equity and welfare economics, are today having egg on their face. I think some of them are on the panel. I don't want to name them at all. It is ultimately the truth is that you need inclusive growth in a country where 22% of the people live below the poverty line. That is the Congress's economic philosophy. I'm telling you the narrative for 2019. We believe it is economic growth. We need private sector. We also need to ensure that large parts of India don't get left behind. And by the way, the whole argument of, Mr. Jagdish Bhagwati and Arvind Panagriya has failed, which is why Narendra Modi today is doing exactly what the Congress did, which is why Narendra Modi, after criticizing Manrega, is now saying, I want to spend on Manrega. He's done nothing different from what the Congress did, because he knows that's the only model that will work in the country. And his statement on pro-industry, I'm frankly speaking not surprised, because who will be anti-industry? I don't think any political party other than maybe the CPM or the CPI will be publicly anti-industry, because they can't be. I don't think it's economically rational.
Okay, I take that point, Sanjay, and I think you've raised some questions. You've also been critical of the experts on the panel other than Hitesh Jain as well. But anyways, I'll let them respond. I'm coming to Jaggi, you first, and then I'll go to Swami. And again, and to take a phrase that was very eloquently put by the former Chief Economic Advisor, Arvind Subramaniam, who even said that he should charge royalty for everyone who uses this phrase, stigmatized capitalism. So if Rahul Gandhi hasn't stigmatized capitalism, and if clearly Narendra Modi hasn't, who or what has stigmatized capitalism, Jaggi? I mean, why has capitalism been stigmatized over the last several years?
Well, I think we have to go back to where we started in 1947. If you see, every film in Bollywood used to abuse business. I mean, there was always the evil money lender, there was the evil thing. True, there was extortion, all kinds of things going on. But I think we have had a social history of defaming business right from the beginning. Then you had the license permit Raj. After 1991, we had huge explosion shift away from license permit Raj to regulator Raj, which means you had all this opening up of sectors where money was made based on policies of how the telecom sector was to be opened up. You saw the kind of idiotic bids that were made in 1994, which had to be corrected 2 or 3 times till Arun Shourie came and fixed it up. So I think there has been anti-business sentiment building up because cronyism has been dying a very slow death. It is only now, as Swami said a little earlier, it has come down, it has not gone away. But to the extent that it has come down and it's a smaller fraction of what it was in 1991 or in 1950, I think we must be thankful for that. We have got to make sure that it ultimately ends up being 0 or a minuscule percent. And that is it's very easy in a poor country to build and blame somebody, and that a businessman who seems to have wealth wrapped in wealth is easy to blame. That's the problem. I think the minute you have somebody who has something, you obviously think that he is the cause of your poverty. So I think socially, I think we find that that's easy to, politically it's easy to demonize business, and that unfortunately has not ended. And I think to the extent that the PM is trying to reverse that, I think it's a good move, but it'll still be a long while till public attitudes change and they start seeing good businessmen in good light.
Okay. I know Sanjay Jha wants to come in and I'll go to him next. But Swami, I want to take up the point of stigmatized capitalism forward. And I think each one of us till such time that we keep using stigmatized capitalism will remember what a bright mind Arvind Subramanian was. But just to take the point that Jaggi was making forward, this anti-business sentiment has been ingrained for a very long time in India. What will you attribute this to? Why is business always looked upon with suspicion, with doubt?
No, I think you will find this right through history in all civilizations. I think it's in the Bible, right? it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. So I mean, in a very large number of cultures, people have looked down on the rich, have viewed them as exploiters. It's not different. I would say, you know, as long as the rich and powerful have monopoly situations, without doubt that is misused in a wide variety of ways, which is an exploitation of the people. To that extent, it deserves to be stigmatized. So there is plenty in business, as there is plenty in politics that deserves to be stigmatized. And if some politicians have a bad name and businessmen have a bad name, many people have earned it. So, you know, it's not the case. But to me, the idea of suited, booted is such a generalized phrase. Or to say only a few groups. What do you mean, what few groups? Now, you know, why don't you get specific and say this group has benefited here, that group has benefited there? Now, what I saw in Parliament recently, some very relevant questions were raised about the Rafale deal, right? Now there you are being specific. You are not just tarring everybody. You are not just saying suiting, booting. You say, on what basis was this particular contract given? Was there competition? Who is it who is going to get the offsets? The same thing would apply to submarines. The same thing would apply to tanks. I mean, so as you get the private sector in these areas, if there is a huge amount of discretion, then you need to worry. Is the process good? Is the process wrong? And I would say that if the Congress is able to focus on areas which stand out and areas which look non-competitive, which look suspicious, that is the right way to go. But broad things like suited, booted, or just say some corporations, no, let us get specific, home in on the specific things, and then I think the Congress will gain more credibility, not just by the broad thing about, oh, suited versus booted versus B.
It's an oversimplification. Sanjay, I know you're coming in, but since Swami has spoken on Rafale, only fair I get a word in from Hitesh. In some sense, Hitesh, is the debate misplaced? It isn't just about being seen in the company of industrialists. You know, we are in today's 24/7 media age, you know, with the world of digital media and all, we all try too hard to oversimplify. So it's not about that. The fact of the matter is, it's about our rules being bent to favor you know, particular businesses, particular conglomerates, like allowing a 2-week-old company Rafale defense contract over state-owned HAL, or allowing an institute on paper status of eminence without even, you know, a website being ready. These are or being seen on the ad of a private mobile operator. These are some instances which, in, you know, perception, public perception, some may argue are seen as blatantly favoring individual companies or businesses. Hitesh Jain.
On Rafale, Congress is being economic with truth. It is just spreading bizarre lies, and that is not going to help. They feel that, you know, they were caught in Bofors, so, and they cannot digest their 44. Oh, we have got Rafale. So the fact is, for 12 years you did not conclude the deal. We do not know the price, and there is a difference between a rundown car and a fully loaded car. The simple difference is that if you are going to buy a car without tires, without any spare parts, without any accessories, and if you are going to ask for a price, it's going to be different. But at the same time, if you are going to buy the car with complete accessory, all the details and everything, it's going to be different. But the fact is, on Rafale, the Congress has compromised with the security of India. I mean, they were, we needed, MiG, we know the situation of MiG, we know the amount of accidents, we know the amount of soldiers that have died in the MiG crash. The idea is that we know at what dangerous, in 2008, you had blast.
No, Hitesh, give me a second. Let me come in there. This is no 1 second, Hitesh. Let me come in there. This is not a debate
on the floor of the parliament as the Congress opposition leader.
No, Hitesh, what are you talking about? This is not a debate on Rafale. Why are you making this? Hitesh, 1 second. Hitesh, 1 second. Let me come in. Hitesh, let me come in. This is not just a debate on Rafale. This is a debate on being seen. Why was HAL dislodged? Why did the government not throw its weight behind state-owned operator like HAL? Why was Prime Minister Modi's picture being used in a RelGeo ad? Why was RelGeo an institute only on paper given status of eminence? These are questions and you know, important questions that are being raised. Let's not make this a Rafale debate, because I have my 2 bits to add as well. We've done very exhaustive discussions on Rafale here. The truth lies somewhere in between. It doesn't lie with you saying state of our technology. It doesn't lie with the bare bone argument of the Congress party either. Please answer the question that has been asked of you. Hitesh, please come in.
You cannot be economic with the truth and then expect the response. You cannot be economic with the truth and expect the response. The industry do not enjoy the immunity like the opposite Congress leader was enjoying the immunity on the floor of the house. The fact is, take the fact that on the picture, nothing wrong. On the if the picture is there, or you're seen with the industry. I think we should not be hypocrite. We should be very straight. If you can attend the cocktail parties, you can take the private plane and land in Moscow. What is that? I mean, let's not get into that. You should get specific. There's no point in getting into this mischievous rumor mongering. There is no point to being a hypocrite. Talk issues that are substantive. I mean, all this 2 minutes, this thing on the television can look cute, but they have got no substance. They are hollow.
Raised in Parliament. Okay. Okay. Some very substantive issues were raised in Parliament that did not find an answer. But I'll get Sanjay Jha to come in because he's been wanting to come in for a while. And Sanjay, I want you to respond to the argument that Hitesh Jain is making. That, you know, just because you enjoy immunity in Parliament, please don't come up with arguments. These are hollow and baseless. You've got enough skeletons in your own cupboard.
You know, Supriya, with due respects, I don't want to even get into Rafale. I just want to tell you this. This is just the beginning. It is a huge scam, and we will talk about it when we debate that separately. But I want to address your point that I think I think Iyer or Jagannathan mentioned. You know, for God's sake, let's understand the suit boot ki sarkar is what we call in political communication as a metaphor. You don't say that everybody who wears a suit boot is corrupt. I mean, Narendra Modi during the time of demonetization made everybody with cash to be corrupt, Mr. Iyer, including you perhaps. But that's not the truth, right? So let's try and understand this. It's a metaphor. I wear a suit boot to work every day. I don't think I have any corrupt money. Let Mr. Jaitley send ED and IT to my house. He won't find any corrupt money. It doesn't mean that anybody who wears suit boot is corrupt. So I think the bottom line here that what Mr. Gandhi was saying is that you don't have a coherent policy that is balanced. And that is exactly what has turned out. I don't think Mr. Modi's government is anti-poor. It's also anti-middle class. It's also anti-neo-middle class. It's also anti-SMEs. It's also anti-business. It's also anti-industry. It's only pro-crony capitalists. And by the way, I would request anybody to read Mr. Chidambaram's article in the Indian Express, where the economic data on gross fixed capital formation, credit offtake, the complete collapse of the rural economy tells you what this government has ultimately done for their, you know, business that they profess they have a big interest on. It doesn't work in India. You have to have an equitable economic plan, and that's where the government has been a disaster. Sanjay, I want to make one point though on transparency.
Sure.
You know, Supriya and Sandeep. So, one last point, and I'm done. Okay. I'm done. Okay. You see, I think the seminal point of today's debate ought to be transparency. You know, it is. I laughed. I literally laughed when Narendra Modi in his speech mentioned Mahatma Gandhi and G.D. Birla. He forgot that that relationship was based on transparency. Look what this government does. This government actually has destroyed the RTI. This government doesn't want to talk on the floor of the House and answer the opposition.
Don't take this, Sanjay, don't make a political point here, Sanjay. You're digressing.
On the HSBC list.
Okay.
Does nothing.
Okay.
Does nothing.
Sanjay, we didn't let Hitesh make a political point, and it will not be fair on my part to let you make a political point. I have one simple comment to make, you know, which is that if this perception, you know, you said that what is wrong in, you know, suit boot ki sarkar is a metaphor. The problem is this relentless attack on industry. And frankly, corporate India does feel victimized. Otherwise, a person of, you know, you can criticize Swami, you can criticize Jaggi, but a person of Anand Mahindra's stature would not respond to the Prime Minister's comment saying, and I quote, a much needed vote of confidence at a time when only one unfortunate face of industry was being perceived. Dhanyavad, Narendra Modi. So, you know, now surely Anand Mahindra is not someone who is going to, you know, try and settle scores. So the larger point is this perception has been floated, and for political reasons. I don't think we can digress from that reality. But Shobhna Kamineni, you know, I need to get you in. You've been quiet. In a liberalized economy, and the larger point, and I don't think we can afford to get into the specifics of a Rafale deal, but in a liberalized economy, economy, how tough is it for a government to deal with the moral dilemma of promoting private enterprise, of giving a boost to Indian industry over state-owned entities, like in the case of Rafale contract? Who should the government support? A state-owned HAL or a private company like Reliance Defense that tied up with a Dassault? So, how does one manage these trade-offs in a transparent manner?
This is a fact of life in India, and I don't think that the state-owned companies or public sector companies are bad, and they gave the requisite fillip. If you see Trichy, an entire city was built on BHEL, and these are the kind of things, and that's where the government should spend. They should spend and they should set up where the industry fears to tread. At the beginning, they will seed, and I think that I just came from Israel, and I see the government working as a seeding role. That they create the green shoots of industry, and then we'll pick up, because truly we're quite risk averse. No matter if people say, oh, we're great entrepreneurs, but there is some amount of risk that private enterprise, they don't have. Most of them don't have the deep pockets, and they have shareholders to report to. There are many things that prevent us from just taking that leap of faith. But government can do this because, and again, they have the greater good in mind. So I think it's everybody working together, which is really necessary at this time. So put those, whatever is required, those checks and balances. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Sanjay Jha, I'm tempted to take this across to the experts, and I will in just a bit, but I do want to ask the Congress party spokesperson, has the Congress written off big business in their scheme of things? Because, the reality is, and is some of this angst also driven by the fact that the big business has perhaps checked out on you, at least when it comes to political funding?
Not at all. I don't, let me tell you, I'm glad you're asking me that question, Supriya, but let me tell you, I live in Mumbai, right? Commercial capital of India. I'm part of corporate India, incidentally. I meet a lot of my fellow colleagues who are CEOs in banks and companies, and they all tell me, we have never been more scared in our lives than we have been in the last 4 years. I'm saying this publicly on a very respectable channel. I have people who are there who tell me they're scared to criticize the government. I read a report today written by a very, very prominent financial journalist and editor who writes that in a meeting with very, very senior industrialists, when Narendra Modi asked them, what is your view on the business environment, not a single CEO spoke. That's the reality of India. Now, let me tell you this part. As far as the Congress party is concerned, and I'm saying it with complete authority, I don't need to take anybody's permission, we grew between 2004 to 14 at an average of GDP of close to 8%. You think that would have happened without India's private capital and manufacturing, big businesses contributing? And you think they would have contributed if the government was not, kind of boosting them up? Okay. I think if we come back to par in 2019, okay, you will see Indian economy boom. Okay. You see Indian manufacturing and business happy. Okay, Sanjay, you will not see anybody in distress. There will be no tax terrorism. Okay. There will be more reforms.
What will happen if Congress comes to power in 2019 is a debate in itself. Okay, what will happen if Congress comes to power in 2019 is a debate in itself. Hitesh Jain, at the heart of this is electoral funding. That's at the heart of this industry politician nexus. And many believe that electoral bonds, this so-called reform of this government, actually makes it opaque instead of making it more transparent. Hitesh Jain, very quickly.
Well, Sandeep, yes, and I will tell you why. Before electoral funding was there, what was happening pre-2014? There were the rules that the political parties could collect 200 rupees, 500 rupees, 1000 rupees and 2000 rupees. They were maintaining the political registers in which they were writing anonymous sources. You are not even required to name. I mean, this was the biggest thing. You collect the cash, show it as a 2000 rupees like a cinema ticket, where today when you buy the cinema ticket, you don't need to give the name of the, they do not maintain the name of the record as to who has purchased the ticket. So that was the law, and on the basis of which dirty cash was generated. Precisely this issue has been addressed in the reforms since 2014, which you are seeing in terms of political funding. The fact is, Congress cannot deny the fact, and they know the kind of registers they were maintaining and how they were entering 2,000 rupees and where were the details of the people. You just collect the funding, collect all the cash from the market and just write 2,000 rupees in the name of ABCD. There is no scrutiny, there is no tax inquiry. All the systems were such, I mean, you can call, I like, simple, Garibi Hatao, and in the name of Garibi Hatao, only thing is that you collect the cash, prepare the bogus registers and submit the records.
I'm challenging him, Supriya. Will he come on the RTI? Ask him.
Going on. At least now you have the...
Please, okay. I've got the last 1.5 minutes on the show. I'm not going to let Hitesh Jain and Sanjay Jha take pot shots at each other. Please wait. Sanjay, please wait. Swami, to you, and 30 seconds to both you and Jaggi each. 4.5 years into its tenure, has the influence of big business in policy making in New Delhi come down, or has it actually gone up vicariously?
It has gone down overall. It does not mean it has gone down with every single individual businessman. Overall, it has gone down. That is a positive thing. We find that there is an exit policy for businessmen who are having to, under the solvency code, they are having to give up their big industries. Some fellows have had to flee abroad who didn't have to flee abroad earlier. They manage things here out. So yes, things are somewhat better, but things are still extremely, extremely murky. This is not a clean country. This is still a country sullied by a very considerable amount of corruption. So we have a long way to go.
Things are better, but we have a long way to go. Jaggi, 30 seconds. For any government in power, it's important to look business friendly, and yet it needs to send out a clear signal of having a rules-based economic order. Saaf niyat sahi vikas, says the Prime Minister. How has this government fared on that accord, and what are the key learnings? 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think if you were to say, compared to 2014, are we a little more transparent in 2018 than we were in 2020? I would say yes, but we are nowhere near the frontier in that area. Are you saying we are more rules based than we were earlier? Yes, with all the auctions and all the natural resources being alienated only through a process, we are far more transparent, but there are still many grey areas. And the worst area of probably non-performance is probably the key area of political funding. I think electoral bonds have moved the needle only 5% in terms of cleanliness, because now you know the corporate can give white money to political fund, but it does not break the nexus between corporations and corporations and political parties. Until that transparency comes, you are not going to get clean elections. So I think that the electoral bonds thing is not good enough. Okay. It's far, far, far from what we need.
Okay. Lot more needs to be done, but the view of Swami and Jaggi is that we've made some improvements. Sanjay Jha, Hitesh Jain, always wonderful having the two of you take on each other on the India development debate. Shobna Kamanini, Jaggi and Swami, appreciate you for joining in with your perspective as well on this India development debate. Big biz is an important stakeholder in the Indian growth story, and so to quote Arvind Subramaniam, stigmatized capitalism will not serve anyone's purpose. They create big jobs, sink in investments and take risks which help propel our economic growth.
Indeed, but the truth also rests somewhere with the have-nots. The rising levels of inequality and the deepening divide, at least economically, will always make profit a bad word and make business appear suspicious. For a more egalitarian India, it's the have-nots that also have to be pulled up out of their ranks, and that is exactly what any elected government of the day needs to do, besides promoting big business as well. Thank you very much for being with us on this edition of the India Development Debate. Up next is Top 10 at 10.